Welcome to Public Health on Call, a podcast from the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, where we bring evidence, experience, and perspective to make sense of today's leading health challenges. If you have questions or ideas for us, please send an email to publichealthquestion@jhu.edu. That's publichealthquestion@jhu.edu for future podcast episodes.
This is Lindsay Smith-Rogers, and today is Sunscreen 101. Dr. Shafat Hassan, a Johns Hopkins dermatologist, joins the podcast again, this time to talk to Stephanie Desmon and answer all of your pressing sunscreen questions. What types of sunscreen are best? Are they safe? Why are sunscreens that filter out more harmful rays available in Europe and not the United States? Do you need sunscreen on a cloudy day or indoors or in winter? And so much more. Let's listen.
Shafat Hassan, thanks so much for joining me.
Steph, thank you for inviting me again. It's always a pleasure to be on the podcast with you guys.
So today we want to talk about sunscreen and some sunscreen myths and what is the best sunscreen that we should be using. But I want to start with the basics. I was raised in an era where like the SPF was 4 and the teenagers would go on the roof with their little reflectors to get sun, which was not a good idea. And so I really want to talk about sort of what is sunscreen, and let's start there.
So sunscreens, they're just topical products, designed to protect our skin from those harmful UV radiations that reach to the surface of Earth. And those can cause those sunburns, premature aging, skin cancers, most importantly.
And there are different types of UV radiation?
Yes. When we broadly we see UVA and UVB and UVC. UVC, thank God, is already blocked by the ozone layer, and it's a shorter wavelength. It does not reach to the Earth's surface. But when we talk about sunscreens, we always see UVA and UVB. So UVA has the longest wavelength, and it can reach deeper into your skin, into the dermis, and damages that collagen, elastin, thus causing those signs of early aging, inflammation, wrinkles, sunspots, etc. And UVA, again, it consists of like 95% of all the UV rays. And when we talk about UVB, again, it's shorter wavelength than the UVA, but stronger, and it damages the outer layer of the skin, causes sunburn, and very important thing to mention here, it causes DNA mutation in those skin cells and obviously to skin cancers. I think it's very important for us to use a sunscreen that has, that's broad spectrum and covers for both UVA and UVB.
I want to jump in on that. In the United States, can we buy products that protect against UVA and UVB?
Yes, surely. They're very commonly available. So whenever you buy sunscreen next time, Steph, you just look at it. It says broad spectrum, covers for UVA, covers for UVB.
Okay, so the TikTok folks are telling me that sunscreen isn't healthy for me, which I know it is. I've been using it my whole life. But tell me, are there health risks of using sunscreen?
They say it's very important to mention here that like the misinformation spreads out like fire on the social media. There could be some concerns on the ingredients of chemical sunscreens like oxybenzone or octinoxate, which may cause some hormonal disruption or allergic reactions. However, these risks are generally considered low in the concentrations used in the sunscreens, and definitely they are outweighed by the benefits of the UV protection. It could, some of these chemicals like oxybenzone and octinoxate, sometimes it's shown that they may cause harm to the coral reefs or marine life. But, these are always an option available for you. Why not go for mineral sunscreens and protect yourself and protect the environment?
So mineral sunscreens, what are those?
So when we talk about sunscreens, they're broadly classified into two. There's two kinds of sunscreens, the physical sunscreen, which is also called the mineral sunscreen, and the chemical sunscreen. So when we talk about the mineral sunscreen, we always see products like zinc oxide and titanium dioxide. What happens is this kind of sunscreen sits on the surface of your skin and reflects those harmful UV rays, and it may leave a white cast, which is a concern for a lot of people. But hold on, just try to dab it softly and wait for a few minutes, I think, and spread it out evenly on your skin. It goes fine. And physical sunscreen, again, these mineral sunscreens or physical sunscreens, they're less likely to irritate your skin if you're concerned. And now on the other side, when we have chemical sunscreens, you would usually see those ingredients like oxybenzone, avobenzone. So what happens is how it works, it absorbs the UV rays and changes the chemical properties and changes it to heat and then releases it out, throws it out. So chemical sunscreens, again, as we just mentioned earlier, they may cause a little bit of skin irritation, maybe linked to the environmental concerns like for the marine and coral reef, the harmful effects to a marine and coral reefs. But again, we always have an option available. Why not?
Now, the chemical sunscreens, do they protect against UVB rays?
Yes.
Okay.
Chemical sunscreens do protect us as well from both.
So my understanding is that European sunscreen is superior to what you could buy in the United States. So I'm wondering if you could talk to me about that and explain why that is.
When we talk about the European sunscreens, they are maybe considered superior to the US sunscreens. Basically, we need to understand the reasons. So Europe regulates sunscreens as cosmetic products, which allows for more flexibility in approving the active ingredients or the more advanced ingredients or those sun filters. So while in the US, sunscreens are regulated as OTC drugs, which means that they require strict and more time-consuming regulations to approve those new or advanced ingredients or sun filters. In Europe, if you see now, they have already approved about more than 30 sun filters or those advanced filters, which lead to the better protection, right? But when we look here, the FDA has only approved about 16 to 17 filters till now. It's not that FDA is doing anything wrong. FDA is very cautious about the safety and efficacy of these sunscreens for the US consumers.
So is it a different ingredient that I find in Europe? Can I also buy it here?
So the European sunscreens, I don't know. I don't think you will be able to. They're allowed to be sold here, but I think you could buy them internationally on the websites.
Mm-hmm. When I'm trying to buy a European sunscreen, what am I looking for?
Okay, so when we try to buy this sunscreen, the European sunscreen, you always look for the basic ones, which I just mentioned earlier first. You look at the zinc oxide, if it is a physical one or you want to buy the chemical ones. They have the new filters, as I just mentioned, about over 30 plus new filters, which have shown that they provide better protection.
If I'm going to go shopping for one of these European sunscreens, which offer more protection, what am I looking for on the label?
The basic things that we just covered, like, the zinc oxide, titanium, mineral, and chemicals. So mostly they will be this thing first, and then you will go down and see all those new filters in there. So more the filters, better it is.
Right. So you got to read the labels really close.
Of course, when a consumer buys sunscreens, you cannot read each and everything.
Right. So when we were talking about the physical sunscreen and about how it can leave a white cast on your face, I have friends who are people of color who complain about that sort of sunscreen on their skin. I've also had some people say that people with darker skin don't need sunscreen. Help me out with that.
Well, Steph, thank you for giving me that question. Actually, I was waiting for that. Firstly, yes, people of color definitely need sunscreen. The skin cancers do not discriminate based on the color. People with darker skin tone are still susceptible to the skin damage, sunburns, hyperpigmentation, skin cancer, premature aging, precancerous growths, everything. I think it's a myth in these communities that they do not need sunscreen. If you look at the history, Bob Marley, he died at the age of 36, young age, and he died of the skin cancer, melanoma, right? So in the people of color, skin cancer are usually diagnosed when they're diagnosed at a later stage, and then it has worse prognosis, right? So why not prevent a cancer that is preventable? And who doesn't also want to look good? Everybody wants to look good also, right? Now, coming to your point about leaving a cast on the face, I think, as I said, there are sunscreens which are not as thick. The new sunscreens are a little bit thinner, so you could just have to dab them slowly, creating that overall thin film, and just wait for a few minutes. It should go away. It depends on skin to skin, but there are better options available in the market that people who are worried about the cast they could use. Or also, there are the combination sunscreens as well, which use both chemical and physical, products.
All right. I have some quick questions about the basics of sunscreen, right? SPF, the higher the better?
Higher the better. But again, SPF 15 to SPF 30, there's a huge difference, 93% to 97%. But when we go over 30 SPF, it doesn't make a huge difference. So that's why we always recommend people go for any sunscreen that has SPF 30 or 50.
Do I need to wear sunscreen all year round?
Yes, you need to wear sunscreen when indoors. You need to wear sunscreen when it's a cloudy day. Clouds do not block the UV rays. You still get 80% of UV rays to Earth on a cloudy day. And again, when you're indoors, some people ask me, why do I need to wear sunscreen? So indoors, the glass windows, the windows, mostly they're not UV protected, right? So the rays come in. And sometimes there could be an exposure from the lights inside, the halogen lights, fluorescent lights. They also emit UV rays. So you got to be careful, and you have to wear sunscreens even inside. Maybe a lower SPF.
Inside.
Yeah.
In the winter, inside?
Oh, in winter as well. I think in our last podcast with Joshua, we did talk about use of sunscreen in the winter. It's very important.
Right. Okay. Do I wear it under my makeup, over my makeup?
As a general rule of thumb, sunscreens goes at the top, right? Usually you would have a daily skin routine, you use your cleanser, moisturizer, and then goes the sunscreen on top. But when we are usually talking about the makeups or foundations, sunscreen goes first and then goes makeup on the top.
Right. Do you find that people are more skeptical of sunscreen than they've been in the past? Because for me, it's been, as soon as they made sunscreen that was over 30, I was like, yes, give me some and let me put it on all the time.
I think people could be skeptical a little bit these days because, as I said, the misinformation spreads out like fire on social media. So I think we just need to see the regulations. We need to look up to FDA. They're best to actually regulate sunscreens. As I said earlier, that's why we have only 16 or 17 filters approved yet, because they're very mindful of the safety and efficacy of the sunscreens.
So if I use the European sunscreen, is it not safe?
It is safe. It is safe. I'm not saying it's not safe. They also have strict regulations that it's just that they're a little bit faster. And actually in Europe, the need of sunscreen, the consumer need is high, so that there's policies and regulations, they go a little bit faster.
Do you think we'll see those sunscreens here?
Hopefully, FDA is actually trying its best to accelerate the process. And there's a lot of nonprofits or organizations, they are actually advocating for approval of those new filters in the US.
This has been fascinating. Shafat Hassan, thanks so much for joining me.
Sure, no problem. Thank you for having me, Steph.
Public Health on Call is a podcast from the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, produced by Joshua Sharfstein, Lindsay Smith-Rogers, Stephanie Desmon, and Grace Fernandez-Ciceri. Audio production by J.B. Arbogast, Holly Cardinale, Spencer Greer, Matthew Martin, and Philip Porter, with support from Chip Hickey. Distribution by Nick Moran. Production management by Catherine Ricardo. Social media run by Grace Fernandez-Ciceri. Analytics by Eliza Rosen. If you have questions or ideas for us, please send us an email to publichealthquestion@jhu.edu. That's publichealthquestion@jhu.edu for future podcast episodes. Thank you for listening.